Simone Delaware Beauvoir, 1908 to 1986. Imagine a voice that shattered the silence about women's experiences in the 20th century. That voice belonged to Simone de Beauvoir, who revolutionized how we think about gender with her groundbreaking book, The Second Sex. Her famous declaration, "One is not born, but rather becomes," a woman challenged the entire world to rethink what we consider feminine. De Beauvoir's genius lay in connecting personal experience with philosophical thought. She showed how society constructs the idea of woman through customs, education, and social pressure. Think of it like this: just as a tree grows according to its environment, she argued that feminine behavior isn't natural but shaped by culture and society. Working alongside her lifelong partner Jean-Paul Sartre, she developed existentialist ideas about freedom and authenticity. But she went further, showing how women's freedom was uniquely constrained by their situation. She exposed how society treats women as the other, always defined in relation to men, never as independent beings. What makes de Beauvoir's work so powerful is that she didn't just criticize, she offered a path forward. She argued that women must create themselves through their own choices and actions, fighting against the limits society places on them. Her work laid the foundation for modern feminism and continues to inspire millions to question gender roles and fight for equality. Her influence extends far beyond feminism. She showed how philosophical ideas could be applied to real-life experiences and social issues. De Beauvoir's legacy teaches us that philosophy isn't just abstract thinking, it's a tool for understanding and changing the world. Mary Wollstonecraft, 1759 to 1797. In an age when women were considered property, Mary Wollstonecraft dared to imagine a world where they could be equals. Her revolutionary work, A Vindication of the Rights of Woman, 1792, was like a thunderbolt in 18th century society, challenging the basic assumptions about women's capabilities and role in society. Wollstonecraft's central argument was both simple and radical: women appear inferior, not because they are naturally so, but because they are denied education and opportunities. She compared women's situation to plants grown in over-rich soil, stunted and weak, because they weren't allowed to develop naturally. This metaphor perfectly captured how society's treatment of women actually created the very limitations it claimed were natural. What made Wollstonecraft truly remarkable was her understanding that women's rights were human rights. She didn't just argue for women's education as a way to make them better wives and mothers, though she recognized these benefits. Instead, she insisted that women deserved education and rights because they were rational beings capable of contributing to society in their own right. Living her philosophy, Wollstonecraft's own life challenged conventional morality. She had a child out of wedlock, attempted suicide twice, and traveled alone through Scandinavia, actions that scandalized society but demonstrated her commitment to living authentically. Her daughter, Mary Shelley, would later write Frankenstein, carrying forward her mother's legacy of challenging social norms. Wollstonecraft's ideas were so ahead of their time that it took nearly a century for society to catch up. Today, her arguments for women's education and equal rights form the foundation of modern feminist thought. She showed that the path to equality begins with recognizing women's fundamental humanity and capacity for reason.
Click subscribe to this channel to get more topics you love.
Hannah Arendt, 1906 to 1975. Hannah Arendt's brilliance lay in her ability to understand the darkest moments of human history while maintaining hope for humanity. As a Jewish intellectual who fled Nazi Germany, she transformed her personal experience of totalitarianism into profound political philosophy. Her concept of the banality of evil, developed while covering Adolf Eichmann's trial, revolutionized our understanding of how ordinary people can participate in extraordinary evil. In The Human Condition, Arendt introduced the vital distinction between labor, work, and action. Labor sustains life, work creates lasting objects, but action, political engagement with others, is what makes us truly human. She saw public political space as the stage where human freedom appears, where people can reveal who they truly are through words and deeds. What makes Arendt's work so relevant today is her analysis of loneliness and isolation as the breeding ground for totalitarianism. She warned that when people lose their connection to shared reality and meaningful political discourse, they become vulnerable to extremist ideologies. Her insights help us understand contemporary challenges to democracy and the rise of political polarization. Perhaps her most profound contribution was her concept of natality, the human capacity to begin something new. Unlike philosophers who focused on death, Arendt emphasized birth and new beginnings. Each person born represents a new possibility for the world, a chance to bring something unprecedented into existence through action and speech. But her work teaches us that political freedom isn't just about voting rights, it's about creating spaces where people can appear to each other in their uniqueness and engage in meaningful dialogue about their shared world. Hypatia of Alexandria c. 353–7415 CE. In the dying days of the Roman Empire, Hypatia of Alexandria stood as a beacon of rational thought and philosophical inquiry. As the first well-documented woman mathematician and astronomer, she represented the height of classical learning at a time when the ancient world was transitioning into the medieval period. Hypatia's genius lay not just in her mathematical and astronomical work, but in her ability to make complex ideas accessible to her students. She taught philosophy using practical examples, demonstrating abstract concepts through mechanical devices. Her work on conic sections and astronomical calculations influenced scientific thought for centuries. What makes Hypatia's story particularly powerful is her commitment to rational thought in an increasingly polarized society. She refused to convert to Christianity, but continued teaching students of all faiths, maintaining that truth transcended religious boundaries. Her death at the hands of a Christian mob marked a symbolic end to the classical age of reason and the beginning of a new era. Today, Hypatia stands as a symbol of intellectual freedom and the pursuit of knowledge regardless of gender or social constraints. Her life reminds us that the search for truth requires courage, especially in times of social upheaval and ideological conflict. Hildegard of Bingen, 1098 to 1179. Hildegard of Bingen was a medieval polymath who shattered every limitation placed on women in her time. She was not just a philosopher but a visionary mystic, composer, botanist, and medical writer. Her understanding of the cosmos combined scientific observation with spiritual insight in a way that speaks to modern holistic thinking. Through her concept of Viriditas greening power, Hildegard developed a unique ecological philosophy that saw divine energy manifesting in the natural world's fertility and growth. This idea anticipates modern environmental ethics by centuries. Her medical writings combined practical herbal knowledge with an understanding of the body's connection to the cosmos. What makes Hildegard remarkable is how she used her mystical experiences to authorize her voice in a male-dominated world. Her visions gave her the authority to speak on theological matters, criticize powerful figures, and develop original philosophical ideas. She created her own language, composed haunting music, and wrote extensively about the interconnectedness of all creation. Elizabeth Anscombe, 1919 to 2001. Elizabeth Anscombe revolutionized moral philosophy by challenging the dominant ethical theories of her time. Her paper Modern Moral Philosophy, 1958, single-handedly revived virtue ethics, arguing that we had lost our way by focusing on rules and consequences rather than character and virtuous action. Anscombe's philosophical precision was legendary. She translated Wittgenstein's work and extended his ideas in new directions. Her work on intention showed how philosophical analysis could clarify psychological concepts, influencing both philosophy of mind and action theory. What makes Anscombe's work so powerful is her insistence that moral philosophy must connect with real life. She argued controversial positions on war, sexuality, and justice, always grounding her arguments in careful philosophical reasoning. Her courage in defending unpopular views, combined with her rigorous logical analysis, made her one of the most influential philosophers of the 20th century. Iris Murdoch, 1919 to 1999. Iris Murdoch stands unique in philosophical history as someone who explored moral truth through both philosophical writings and novels. Her vision of morality was radically different from the dominant theories of her time. While others focused on choices and actions, Murdoch argued that morality was primarily about vision, about seeing reality clearly and accurately. Her concept of unselfing remains one of her most profound contributions. She argued that our default state is one of fantasy and self-absorption, where we see the world through the lens of our ego. True moral development, according to Murdoch, requires breaking free from these self-centered illusions. It's like cleaning a dirty window, gradually removing the grime of self-preoccupation until we can see the world and other people as they truly are. Murdoch's novels weren't just entertainment, they were philosophical laboratories where she explored moral concepts in action. Through her characters, she showed how people struggle with love, goodness, and the effort to see reality clearly. She believed that art, especially literature, could help us develop moral vision by showing us detailed pictures of human life and character. What makes Murdoch's philosophy particularly relevant today is her emphasis on attention and love. In an age of distraction and self-promotion, her call to really look at others and the world around us is more important than ever. She argued that love, not romantic love, but the clear-eyed recognition of others' reality, was central to moral life. Her work on consciousness and free will was equally revolutionary. She challenged both scientific reductionism and existentialist ideas of radical freedom, arguing for a more nuanced view that recognized both our constraints and our capacity for genuine moral growth. She showed how virtue develops not through dramatic choices, but through patient attention and the gradual development of good habits of perception. Martha Nussbaum, 1947-present. Martha Nussbaum has transformed contemporary philosophy by bringing ancient Greek insights to bear on modern problems. Her work spans an incredible range from emotions to feminism, from animal rights to global justice. What makes her work so powerful is her ability to combine rigorous philosophical argument with attention to real human experiences and emotions. Her capabilities approach, developed with economist Amartya Sen, revolutionized how we think about human development and justice. Instead of focusing solely on resources or happiness, Nussbaum argues that justice requires enabling all people to develop and exercise key human capabilities, from bodily health to political participation, from imagination to connection with nature. This framework has influenced global development policy and how we measure national progress. Nussbaum's work on emotions challenges the traditional philosophical view that emotions are irrational impulses. Through careful analysis of grief, love, anger, and disgust, she shows how emotions contain judgments about value and importance. Her book Anger and Forgiveness offers profound insights into political reconciliation and personal relationships. Her feminist philosophy is equally groundbreaking. She argues that philosophical traditions have often ignored women's experiences and perspectives, leading to incomplete or distorted theories. Her work on objectification shows how treating people as mere tools or bodies damages both individuals and society. She's also written extensively about how literature and arts education are crucial for developing democratic citizens capable of empathy and critical thinking. Perhaps most importantly, Nussbaum models what she calls the philosophical style. She writes clearly and engagingly, using examples from literature, current events, and personal experience to illuminate abstract ideas. She shows how philosophy can engage with real-world problems while maintaining intellectual rigor. Mary Warnock, 1924–2019. Mary Warnock exemplified how philosophy can directly impact public policy and social change. As a philosopher who chaired crucial government committees, she showed how careful ethical thinking could help society navigate complex moral challenges, particularly in medical ethics and education. Her work on imagination revolutionized our understanding of how we learn and create meaning. She argued that imagination wasn't just about fantasy, it was fundamental to how we understand reality and make moral judgments. This insight influenced both educational theory and aesthetic philosophy. Warnock's contributions to medical ethics were groundbreaking. Her committee's recommendations on human fertilization and embryology became the foundation for legislation in many countries. She showed how philosophical analysis could help society find practical solutions to new ethical challenges raised by medical advances. Her work on existentialism brought continental philosophy to English-speaking audiences. She argued that existentialist insights about freedom and authenticity were crucial for understanding modern moral life. However, She also criticized existentialism's extreme individualism, arguing for the importance of shared values and social connections. Warnock believed passionately in the importance of philosophy in public life. She argued that philosophers should engage with practical problems and help society think through difficult moral issues. Her own life exemplified this commitment, as she moved between academic philosophy, public policy, and education reform. Julia Kristeva, 1941–present. Julia Kristeva's work represents a powerful fusion of linguistics, psychoanalysis, and philosophy that has transformed how we think about language, identity, and human experience. Her concept of the semiotic, the pre-linguistic, rhythmic, bodily aspect of language revolutionized our understanding of how meaning is created. Kristeva's theory of abjection has become particularly influential across multiple fields. The abject is what disturbs identity and order, what doesn't respect borders or rules. Think of our visceral reaction to a corpse. It represents the breakdown of the distinction between subject and object, self and other. This concept has helped us understand everything from horror films to social exclusion. Her work on depression and melancholia offers profound insights into human suffering. Unlike many theorists, Kristeva combines clinical experience as a psychoanalyst with philosophical reflection. She shows how language and symbolization can help heal psychological wounds, but also how some experiences resist being put into words. What makes Kristeva's work particularly relevant today is her analysis of foreignness and otherness. As a Bulgarian-born French intellectual, she brings personal insight to questions of cultural identity. Her book Strangers to Ourselves argues that recognizing our own internal foreignness is crucial for accepting others. In an age of migration and cultural conflict, this insight is more valuable than ever. Through her writing on love, motherhood, and feminine genius, Kristeva has also contributed significantly to feminist thought. However, she challenges simplistic feminist positions, arguing for a nuanced understanding of sexual difference that acknowledges both biological and cultural factors. Her work shows how women can create new forms of discourse and meaning without rejecting their embodied experience. Susan Haack, 1945–present. Susan Haack has earned the nickname the Great Sane Philosopher for her ability to find reasonable middle grounds between extreme positions. Her philosophical work focuses on logic, epistemology, and pragmatism, but she approaches these technical subjects with remarkable clarity and common sense. Her most significant contribution might be Foundationalism, a theory of knowledge that combines the best aspects of foundationalism and coherentism. Using her famous crossword puzzle analogy, she shows how our beliefs support each other like crossword entries, while also connecting to empirical evidence. This elegant solution to a long-standing philosophical problem demonstrates her ability to transcend traditional dichotomies. Haack's defense of scientific inquiry against both extreme skepticism and uncritical scientism is particularly valuable in our post-truth era. She argues that science is neither infallible nor merely socially constructed, but rather a refined and systematic version of everyday inquiry. Her work helps us understand both the power and limitations of scientific knowledge. Through her concept of serious philosophy, Haack challenges the artificial divisions between analytic and continental philosophy. and between professional philosophy and common sense. She argues that philosophy should be rigorous without being needlessly technical and should address real questions rather than purely academic puzzles. HAACK's recent work on evidence and legal proof has important implications for law and public policy. She shows how philosophical analysis can help clarify practical questions about evidence and truth-finding in legal contexts. Her clear writing style and practical focus make complex philosophical ideas accessible to non-specialists. Mary Midgley, 1919 to 2018. Mary Midgley was a philosophical rebel who challenged the dominant scientific materialism of her time. She began her most productive period of philosophical writing at age 50, proving that wisdom often comes with age and experience. Her work focused on the relationship between humans and animals, environmental ethics, and the limits of scientific explanation. Midgley's critique of scientific reductionism was powerful and precise. She argued that trying to explain everything through physics or genetics was like trying to understand a house by studying only its bricks. Different levels of explanation are needed for different aspects of reality. This insight helps us avoid both scientific overreach and anti-scientific reaction. Her work on human nature and animal behavior was groundbreaking. She showed how humans are neither purely rational beings nor merely sophisticated animals, but rather creatures with complex mixed natures. Her book Beast and Man demonstrates how understanding our animal nature is crucial for understanding our moral and social lives. Midgley was particularly skilled at exposing the myths and metaphors that shape scientific and philosophical thinking. She showed how the selfish gene metaphor, for example, had been taken too literally and had distorted our understanding of evolution and human nature. Her work helps us recognize how our chosen metaphors can either illuminate or mislead. What makes Midgley's philosophy especially valuable is her emphasis on the practical importance of philosophical ideas. She showed how mistaken philosophical assumptions could lead to harmful political and social policies. Her clear, witty writing style made complex philosophical ideas accessible to general readers.